Okay, so in our last video, we talked about rounding to the nearest 10 and 100 using number lines, and now we're going to use place value. So we're going to take what we learned about number lines, think about it a little bit, and then extend it to just an easier, more efficient way to model the number line without having to draw it out every time. So to start, I tend to think of number lines when I'm rounding as like roller coasters. So if I was let me do this. If I was on a roller coaster, okay, here's my roller coaster car, okay, and I have to round to the nearest 10. First of all, let's think about a roller coaster. If you're on a roller coaster, if you're somebody who likes roller coasters, especially like old wooden ones, those are the kind I like. When you go up the hill, you're riding on that chain, right? And so it goes tick, tick, oops. It goes like tick, 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 tick. And then you get to the top of the hill and it kind of pauses for a second. And then that chain lets go, right? It rolls backwards down the hill, and you go with just momentum, woo, like that, right? So that's what happens when we ride a roller coaster. So when we're rounding, you got to think about that. So my number is 36. So I'm going to ride my roller coaster, tick, 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 to 36. Here's where 36 would be. Now, that chain, it let go of me right here. So now I'm on this side of the hill. What happens when you get over the hill on the roller coaster? It goes, woo, down to the other end. So anytime I'm on a roller coaster, or I'm rounding, if I'm on this side when it stops, I'm going to roll backwards. Whereas if I'm at the top or on this side, I'm going to roll forwards. So if you think about it like a number line, anything that's before the hill rounds down to the back one, to whatever the lower 10 is. Anything that's on the other side of the hill is going to round up to the other 10. So here's 36. I would have ridden my roller coaster 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and that's when the chain broke. Is my roller coaster going to go, oh no, and go back up over the hill? Is momentum going to be able to pull me back that way? Or am I just going to use gravity and fall forwards? I'm going to use gravity and fall forwards, right? So 36 is going to round up. Oops. 36 rounds up to 40. Nope, not to 30, Mrs. Shock. To 40. My pencil is dying, and so I'm trying to go quick. Okay, so think about the number line like a roller coaster every time. So here's another one. If I'm on my roller coaster, here's my car, and I'm riding 40, 41, and the chain breaks, am I going to roll backwards, just this little bit down the hill, or is somehow some magic miracle going to happen and I'm going to go woohoo up over the hill? No, not unless something pushes me. And there's nothing pushing me on this roller coaster, so I would round down to 40. Here's another one. Here's my car. And I'm at 87. So 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. If my roller coaster chain breaks, am I going to roll backwards up over the hill? Or is gravity just going to pull me down? It's just going to pull me down. So 87 rounds to 90. The same thing is true with our hundreds, even if I'm rounding to the nearest 10. So here I am, 320, 321, 322, 323, 324, 325, 326. Gravity's pulling me down to 330. I don't know if you've noticed, but every single time, the one in the middle has had a 5 in the ones place. They all did. The middle of that number line, when I'm rounding, is always going to be a 5. When I'm rounding to the nearest 10, it'll be in the ones place. When I'm rounding to the nearest 100, it'll be in the tens place. So here I am, 439. Here's my car. So I'm at 410, 20, 30. Here's 40, so it's about in the middle of those. It's hard to see because this isn't see-through, but it would be right about here. So is my car going to somehow push up over the hill to 500, or is it going to roll backwards? It's going to roll backwards because it's on this side of the hill. So here's what I want to show you. Let's say I'm rounding to the nearest 10. If I'm rounding to the nearest 10, I look at the ones. Okay, so let's say my number is 82. I'm going to look in the ones place. Okay, I always round down if I have a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4 in the ones place. I always round up if I have a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So if you think back to that roller coaster, if I had a 5, I was right here at the top of the hill. Gravity is going to pull me forward because that's the momentum I'm going in. If I was here, I was at a 1, gravity's pulling me backwards. So anything on this side of the hill is pulling me back to the bottom. So that's going to be the 4, the 3, the 2, and the 1. Anything on this side of the hill is going to pull me forward. So that's going to be the 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then 5 falls into this category because if momentum's pushing you up the hill, you're going to keep going forward. So here's what I do every time. I underline the place, and then I look next door 1. And if it's 5 or more, I go up, 4 or less, I go down. So here's an example. If I'm rounding to the nearest 10, I underline the tens place, I look next door. 9 tells me round it up. So what's the next 10 up? That would be 40. If I'm rounding to the nearest 100, I'm going to underline the hundreds, because that's what it says in the question. Look next door. If it's 5 plus, whoopsie, 5 plus, I round up. 4 or less, I round down. So that's 5 or more. So I'm going up. So up 100. So I'm going to add 100 right here. So it's going to be 500. Another way to look at it, let's say my number is 326. If I'm rounding to the nearest 100, think back to that last video in part 1, and we first figured out what's it between, right? So what 200s is it between? It's between 300 and 400, okay? So I look at the hundreds, look next door. 2 says round down. So that's this way. That's 300. If I have 398, what 200s is it between? It's between 300, because that's the one I've got, and 400, because that's the next one. So I look next door. 9 tells me to round it up. So that's 400. The same thing is true with my tens. If I have 381, what 2 tens is it between? It's between 380 and then one more 10, 390. So I'm looking at the tens. 1 tells me round it down. It's closer to 380. 46. What 2 tens is it between? It's between 40 and 50. Which one's it closer to? Whoopsie, wrong one. Well, the 6 tells me it's closer to 50, so I would round up. Okay, so really all you need to know is that when you're rounding, you're either going up if it's closer to the next 10, or down if it's closer to the last 10, or up if it's closer to the next 100, down if it's closer to the last 100. So the first question I always ask myself is, what's it between? If I'm rounding to the nearest 10, it's what 2 tens is it between? If I'm rounding to the nearest 100, it's what 2 hundreds is this between? Then I look one place over. And then if it's 5 or more, I round up. If it's 4 or less, I round down. Okay, off you go to do part 2. Your secret code word is rounding. go do part 2 and then come on back for a little bit of practice.